subscribe to this channel, hit that like button. Please share this video, and we got to dive to this video, y'all. The real Epstein file story is misunderstood. Here, what the government is still keeping a secret today. Now, I'm going to talk to you guys about this, man, because they're not telling you the relation that Donald Trump had with Jeffrey Epstein. It says the Trump administration still hasn't released all the Epstein files. So, with this being said, y'all, this is circulating that Donald Trump knew about the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and that the two was partying, in his home with minors underage. So it says these records could shed light on Jeffrey Epstein and laws enforcement failures. It says the bulk of the DOJ files come from two criminal investigations. But there are more. So let's get to it. It says amongst his many campaign promises, President Donald Trump says he will make government files related to the now dead financier and sex trafficker public. So far, the effort has fallen flat. So it says in February, Attorney General published about 350 pages of documents. All but one 3-pager had previously been made public through court proceeding. Some of the documents was redacted when they had previously been published in full. The Epstein files, phrase 1. A binder was titled "Disappointed Those Hoping for New Revelation About the Financial." Months later, FBI director have not released anything else. Now, they're not releasing this. They're not releasing these documentations of Donald Trump and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, there's a lot of things in these documentations that will shock you. True revelation. So it says, meanwhile, the Justice Department have fought or been unresponsive to Freedom of Information Act's requests for documents about Epstein's in his possession. Lawsuits seeking to enforce those requests. The issue resurfaced last week when Elon Musk, during his brief and public feud with Trump, accused the president of holding up the release because he's in them. Now it says many members of the public are eagerly awaiting some sort of Jeffrey Epstein client list, but it's unlikely one will turn up. No such list is we referenced or even alert into in all 1,000 page of records that have already been made public. Nor are we likely to get any revelation about some sorts of shadowy sex trafficking operation involving members of the international elites, which isn't consistent with claims made in lawsuits. That's not to say that there ain't still lingering questions that the unreleased documents could clarify. It says the U.S. government filed, if made public, could help answer some of the mystery about Epstein, depending on what the document reveal. They may also bring new scrutiny on how the Justice Department handled it, investigation, and feud litigations against Epstein's estate, which has over 100 million remaining assets. Questions about Epstein's have persisted since his death by suicide in 2019 in a Manhattan federal judge, or I should say federal jail. How did he get so rich? Did he really have connections to intelligence agencies? Why didn't the FBI pursue him sooner? The public already have purely record related to Jeffrey Epstein, much of it from a lawsuit that Virginia have accused who killed herself in April filed against, who is serving a 20-year prison sentence for trafficking girls to Epstein for sex over the years. Business Insiders says that Epstein flight log published a version of his little black book of contacts report on his real estate victims compensation programs. So this is huge, y'all. The government failed to release this documentation. And it says here are Epstein documents that the government have kept secret and that could arrive in the future now. Jeffrey Epstein file dropped. So in the nearest future, supposedly these documentation will drop out and the truth will be fulfilled that Donald Trump had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And you guys, these videos that they have will shock you. They have videos of Trump and Epstein seen with underage girls. Now, I'm going to roll this clip and we got to get into this because you guys, the government been keeping this a secret. Now let's get this clip on the way. You guys, please share this video. Hit that like button. Doesn't cost you anything. And let's go.
Millionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein are appalling.
I was unaware that I was going to be alone with him. I thought I was going to die.
More than 100 vulnerable teenagers and young women trapped in his depraved web.
He started torturing himself.
Tonight, the Epstein Files, the latest on who knew what in the biggest sex trafficking ring in history. His elite circle of the wealthy and powerful on notice as thousands of damning new court documents are unsealed.
They will contain the names of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Prince Andrew and the former President Bill Clinton have been named.
More are expected to come out.
In the last few weeks, they've linked Epstein to some very famous names and exposed some very sordid details.
There are videos that exist.
We've been investigating this scandal since Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019. This is where Jeffrey Epstein served his sentence. That he can still shock is extraordinary.
I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced.
As you'll see, this monster's tentacles continue to reach from beyond the grave.
So that's how they're growing so fast. They're hiring freelancers. Look what they're doing with AI experts.
Unbelievable. That dog almost looks real.
What Refusing to answer lawyers on the grounds he might incriminate himself, Epstein thought his own silence would protect him forever. With his death by suicide in 2019 and the jailing of his former lover and right-hand woman Ghislaine Maxwell 2 years ago, Epstein's associates may well have thought the scandal was over. But after a decade of legal wrangling, more than 150 people have been publicly identified.
Look, it says FBI has declined to make public any of these records beyond a small amount enter into evidence during a Maxwell criminal trial. Phrase 1 Epstein files includes a list of some of the evidence obtained in the investigation. Now, for every reason why the governments don't want to bring this out, in other words, they declining to make it public. So they trying to keep this a secret because there's a lot of elite. There's presidents elite like Trump, Biden, and Obama knew about these parties, y'all. So it doesn't surprise me why the government is keeping this secret. Now let's roll this clip, man. We got to cover this, man.
Linked to Epstein and his sex trafficking network.
He was a brilliant manipulator, not just of vulnerable girls and women. He was a brilliant manipulator of powerful men.
A really heinous crime on an absolutely massive scale that was allowed to continue and continue and continue.
On my own island, I can pick the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do. Even explore as I see fit.
Jeffrey Epstein's vast wealth gave him access to whatever he wanted. As we now know, the globe-trotting multi-millionaire created a network where young women were supplied to him wherever he went.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. What I really like to do is I completely follow my own personality.
And with his own plane and plush properties all over the world, he felt free to abuse in the privacy of his various homes.
This is New York, this is Palm Beach, this is California, this is Paris, this is London, this is wherever Epstein was touching down. He needed to have girls on constant call. In every single state or every place that he goes to, he's already got people lined up and makers making that happen.
None of this would ever have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Virginia Giuffre. Her allegations of sexual abuse against Epstein, Maxwell, and famously Prince Andrew have fascinated and repulsed the world. In 2015, Virginia sued Maxwell for defamation. These latest documents are, in the main, sworn statements collected for that case.
It's hard. It's really hard being back here.
We met Virginia 5 years ago when she bravely returned for the first time to the Epstein mansion in Manhattan.
I was abused by people that I can't even mention here. There's a lot of scars hidden behind those walls. It should be ripped down. It should be burned to the ground. Some of my worst memories are from this place. I continue to be shocked by just how awful this story is. The damage that was done to these women is incredibly hard to even express. It's been completely life-altering for them. It's incredibly unfair that this was allowed to happen with impunity for so long.
Lucia Osborne Crowley is a journalist and author who has long covered the Epstein case. She believes the significance of the new Epstein files can't be overstated.
It's really important that we understand the difference between having these allegations swirl around and seeing that people were willing to swear to them under penalty of perjury. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, and they were all willing to do it and to swear to the truth of it.
Lucia also had a front row seat when victims testified against Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell when she was convicted for sex trafficking in 2022.
A lot of what Jeffrey Epstein got away with, he wouldn't have been able to do without her helping to recruit, groom, and entice underage girls.
But she wasn't just the organizer, was she? She was also an abuser herself.
Yes. So we also heard at trial from multiple victims that she was in the room when the abuse was happening and that she engaged in the abuse herself.
But the documents released by the court put the spotlight on the role played by others in Jeffrey Epstein's inner sanctum. The most controversial revelation comes from emails sent by Sarah Ransom, who was abused and trafficked by Epstein. Those emails claim she has seen video recordings made by Epstein of an unnamed friend having sex with Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Richard Branson. All three men vehemently refute the allegation, and in the past, even Sarah has denied the existence of the tapes. But just 2 weeks ago, she stood by her original claim in a Zoom call with Good Morning Britain.
It's no secret that everything was recorded. I've also seen recordings in his office. There are videos that exist. The people that know they exist, I'm sure are very frightened of them being released.
Fear may also explain the resounding silence from others named in this recent mass release of documents. According to thousands of pages of sworn statements by women abused by Epstein, the men now in the headlines are potential witnesses. They place them at the locations where the abuse commonly took place.
The vast majority, including all the names that we're hearing about the most, there are no allegations of criminality. They are just listed as potential witnesses.
If these people are not being accused of any wrongdoing, why have they been named?
The question is what they saw, who they met, what questions they asked themselves about why girls of that age would be in any of the Epstein homes. And if they didn't ask themselves questions about that, why didn't they ask themselves questions about that?
The documents also shed light on the alleged dark motivation of Epstein's sex trafficking to get dirt on some of the world's most influential people.
There is, for the first time, the idea that he was quizzing the girls he sent to famous people for details of what happened for blackmail purposes. That has always been the suspicion that this man had cameras everywhere, that he kept blackmail tapes. That was his leverage.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can. First up, let's talk.
So I heard about Jeffrey Epstein sort of on the social Upper East Side grapevine in New York for a couple of years around the end of the 1990s and early 2000s. You know, he was a figure of mystery in that all people really knew about him was he had kind of out of nowhere known to be unconventional. People thought he was very good looking. And the only thing that people really knew about him, his sort of connector to the outside world, was...
No, the government is not releasing the list, man. They keeping it secret, man. For some reason, they're not releasing it out the list, man. So we know, you know what I mean, that there was leaks at these parties, man. And so, we hearing a little bit about, people that was there, but they're not using the cold conspirators, in other words. So, yeah, man, this this will not be denied, y'all. But the government want to decline this. They don't want to make it public. They want to keep it a secret. You know what I mean? But it's the truth is going to be out, y'all. They know that Donald Trump had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years, man. And you know what I mean? They were seen partying with underage girls. So the truth is going to be out, man. It's going to get to the light, y'all. And this is the reason why the government, they don't want, to share these documentations, man. But sooner or later, it's going to get out because FBI, they got these paperwork, they got all the documentation. So sooner or later, it's going to get out, you guys. The truth is going to be out.
Somebody I knew, it was Ghislaine Maxwell.
With her link to English socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, Vicky Ward was the ideal journalist to profile Jeffrey Epstein. Her task in 2002 was to investigate the man behind the $500 million fortune.
My then boss at Vanity Fair magazine, Graydon Carter, phoned me up and said, I've been hearing about this guy for years. Nobody knows who he is, where he got his money from, what his deal is. And that was how it all began.
But what started as a business story quickly turned sinister.
He liked to have parties with young women, but given that he was a very wealthy, at the time, good-looking bachelor in his 50s, that didn't seem in itself, on the surface, so peculiar. But then I met this woman, Maria Farmer, and she told me that she had worked for Jeffrey Epstein.
No one immediately recognized how significant Maria Farmer would become in the Epstein story. Certainly not the authorities, when in 1996 she was the very first to report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the FBI.
Ghislaine came in to get me one evening. Ghislaine escorts me to Jeffrey's room, and he's lying there, and he goes, well, here, sit down. And so right next to him, and then Ghislaine sits on the other side, and they began assaulting me. But really, while I was lying there the whole time, I'm thinking, my sister's been around these people. My sister was 16. She's been around them alone.
Maria's fears were well-based. Her younger sister Annie had also been abused by the pedophile pair.
And it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
But in a pattern that would be set in the decades ahead, Maria's complaint of sexual abuse against her and Annie to police was ignored.
They just kept it all quiet, put it in the bottom drawer. And they were so dismissive that I just felt daunted and I stopped.
For more than 25 years, Maria Farmer has been filling her canvas with the Epstein story. A tale of horror that began in 1995, when, as a gifted student at the New York Academy of Art, she met Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein gave her a job to buy art for his New York mansion. As well, she became an unwitting witness to a steady stream of teenagers and young women through Epstein's front door. And shockingly, she had direct evidence of Maxwell scouting girls for the insatiable millionaire. What did you witness?
So several times I was in the car with her, and she would ask the driver to stop the car. She'd dash across to the school or the park or wherever she was going, and she would write down her phone number for a child, a young girl, and then I'd see that child at the house, and she'd say they're auditioning. I found a model in the park, and I thought it was really strange because I did see a couple girls in braces, and I've never seen a model with braces.
Do you reflect on how different life would be for so many women today if the FBI had investigated your complaints in 1996?
Yeah. Yeah. I think about it all the time. I do. And it hurts a lot. And I never had children because of it. Because I didn't feel like they would be safe.
It would be another 6 years before the Farmer sisters would again contemplate speaking openly about their experiences with Jeffrey Epstein. When they met with journalist Vicky Ward in 2002, Maria and Annie were nervous. Did it take a lot for you to convince them to open up to you, to talk on public record?
It did. There's no question they were very afraid of these very powerful people. And I felt that at least Vanity Fair magazine was also powerful. By us publishing their allegations, that would afford them protection. And so I think that we all proceeded under that premise, and unfortunately, that premise got exploded in the worst possible way.
What blew it up? What happened?
Well, what happened as this piece was going forward, and I had to finally put all the allegations, both of the business stuff and the farmers' allegations, to Jeffrey and Ghislaine, they in their different ways went completely berserk.
Epstein was instantly menacing, a man prepared to bully and intimidate to save himself.
He treated the entire thing as a game, a really dark, twisted game. He even said to me at the beginning, okay, let's play chess. I'll be black, you be white, you get the first move. And from there, it descended into a sort of horrific game of cat and mouse. He would phone me every day. And then he told me that if he didn't like what I was going to write, he was going to have his witch doctor place a curse on my unborn children, and that was off the record. Then he told me he was going to sue me and ruin me personally, and I was just really frightened of what this man could do.
So even though the threats he was making against you were quite preposterous, you took him seriously. Like you were genuinely frightened.
Yeah, because at the end of all of this, at the end of months of digging, meeting the Farmer sisters, there was still this question mark. Who is this guy?
But it only got worse when Epstein made a personal visit to Vicky's boss at the time, the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair. Epstein got the result he demanded. Maria and Annie Farmer's allegations were cut from the story that went to print in late 2002. So as the journalist who had uncovered these allegations and convinced these sisters to go public, what was your reaction to see that your work was not in your article?
Well, I remember bursting into tears and saying to the person who was directly my editor, we've exposed these poor women. I mean, this is unconscionable.
Was it a reflection also of an abuse of power? I mean, if Jeffrey Epstein walked into the editor-in-chief's office, he wasn't there to say hello.
Of course. 2002 was an era in which Jeffrey Epstein and other predators, Harvey Weinstein, were running the world. And women everywhere weren't speaking up. And the idea that two men would have a meeting after which these allegations would get pulled. I mean, in the world we live in now, it's monstrous.
Vicky's boss, Graydon Carter, denies being influenced or intimidated by Epstein. But either way, the Vanity Fair story didn't go anywhere near exposing the depths of Epstein's depravity.
I only got the very, very, very tip of that iceberg. I didn't get to the den of iniquity that we now know was really going on behind Jeffrey Epstein's closed walls in the mansion in New York and on his island and in Palm Beach.
Around that mansion, that's where this part of the sex trafficking ring really kind of came to life.
Palm Beach, Florida is home to some of the wealthiest people in America, an exclusive enclave for the rich and powerful, including former President Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein's luxurious home here graced the foreshore, its white walls and inscrutable exterior hiding a dark truth. A place where it's estimated more than 100 girls were tricked and abused, their lives changed in an instant.
Been in a car accident and won $5,000 for free? Let me show you how to get $40,000 to $80,000 from your recent car accident without ever having to talk to the insurance company again. Come here, check this out. Here's what insurance companies don't want you to know. They have an AI that calculates the lowest possible payout for your car accident. Check this out. So when they call you right after your car accident and offer you $3,000, that is not what your accident is actually worth. Check out the real.
At 14, I was still in middle school. I was straight A student, never even got a B. I played the first chair trumpet. I was the captain of the cheerleading squad. And then after I met Jeffrey, I just completely quit.
This is where you were living for a while.
Yes, this is where I was living when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein was 48 when a teenage Courtney Wild entered his orbit in 2001. At the time, she was living in this trailer park, one of West Palm Beach's poorest communities. Do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein targeted areas like this?
Yeah, definitely targeted, children like myself that were vulnerable to him and his money, and we felt like we were being helped and saved by him when ultimately he was just preying on us.
As Courtney told me in 2019, her experience started when she was brought to the millionaire by another 14-year-old to make much-needed cash. The trap had been set. What were you expecting to happen? Why did you think you were coming here?
Well, I knew that I was coming here to give a guy a massage and to make $200. I did know that. It was never told to me that I would be molested by this man or anything like that.
Inside, Courtney very soon discovered the massage was cover for a terrible, well-rehearsed crime.
We were taken upstairs. It was like a circular stairwell that led to a hallway that led to his bedroom, which the massage table was in his bedroom bathroom. He asked us to get comfortable, to just, take our clothes off, to be in our bra and panties.
Were you abused during that session?
And so we would massage him for about 30 minutes. And then whenever he was ready, rolled over and asked the person that brought me to go downstairs and wait. And once that happened, then that's when the sexual abuse happened. Yes.
You're 14 and in a completely alien situation, an incomprehensible position. How did you react?
I just remember afterwards how I felt walking down the stairs, and I just felt so dirty and so like a piece of me had been taken. Dirty. I felt it was like my dirty little secret.
Virginia Giuffre's experience was eerily similar, except her recruiter was not a fellow teen, but the sophisticated and seemingly trustworthy Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia was 16 and working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when Maxwell spied her reading a textbook on massage.
She just seemed very nice, and she said, I've got a person that I know who's actually looking for a traveling masseuse. And if you want, I can get you an interview with him. If he likes you, we can get you educated. You'll be a real masseuse. And you'll get to travel and see the world. And she made it sound like it was a dream come true. and it wasn't.
Within hours, Virginia was at Epstein's Florida mansion, lured there by Maxwell's promise. It ended in a devastating sexual attack.
So put it this way, we did the back of him, we did the back of Epstein, and then when he turned over, that's when I was instructed to get undressed and have sex with Jeffrey Epstein while Ghislaine Maxwell was participating as well.
You want to take a moment?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
So you were abused by both of them in your very first encounter?
Yeah, both of them. I was abused by Ghislaine and Epstein. I don't mean to sound sexist in any way, shape, or form, but I expected it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And, yeah, I think that's what hurts the most.
Maxwell's role as Epstein's co-conspirator, for which she is now serving a 20-year jail term, is well known. But in truth, it went well beyond Maxwell. The pair devised a scheme to feed Epstein's voracious appetite. They lured poverty-stricken girls in with cash, fanning their dreams of a better life. According to journalist Lucia Osborne Crowley, by the time the sexual abuse began, many were too invested in their promises to get out.
This was a well-oiled machine of finding vulnerable young girls who really needed someone to look after them, and then also using those girls to try and entrap younger and younger girls. And a lot of that, it seems, was developed in Florida.
How many girls do you think you brought to Jeffrey Epstein?
At the minimum 50. But
See, there's a lot of the younger was trapped in this island. And this is the reason why everything looks suspicious when President Donald Trump, why the government is not releasing these documentations, y'all. And why Trump is slamming, these executive orders. Come on, man. They time has come. And the thing of it is, man, the government are declining these documentations, man, when it comes to the elites. Because FBI got all these photos of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump and these elites. Just sooner or later, you guys, everything's gonna come out. Sooner or later, you guys. Watch when Trump started getting impeached. They're gonna bring all these documentations out. Watch, sooner or later, you guys. Sooner or later, everything gonna be out. Sooner or later. What's come in that darkness will come into the light. Just a matter of time. Let's go.
anywhere from 50 to 70 girls.
What were their ages?
The same ages of me, 14, 15, 16. I just hold a lot of guilt and shame for doing those things. And just to know that I had any influence on that happening to somebody else, just, it's just devastating and breaks my heart.
Epstein's vile pyramid scheme might have continued unchecked, if not for the stepmother of one of his teenage victims, who called the Palm Beach Police Department in 2005.
It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters. Found out that ended up being that they went to Palm Beach to a gentleman's house, and they start off by giving this gentleman a massage, and he pays them if he likes them and he thinks that they're pretty enough, he keeps them around to do other things. Okay. So I wasn't quite sure if there was an investigation or if you guys had any word. Well, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
That initial call was so alarming, the police launched an investigation, and it didn't take them long to uncover the revolting scale of Epstein's network.
Did
just know anybody's real true age, or he didn't care?
I don't think he cared. He told me the younger the better.
Yeah, so he took my shirt off, so I took my shirt off.
Okay, so were you in bra or were you topless?
I ended up being topless, yeah. And he started getting all excited a lot, and then he started touching himself.
During the massage, did he ask you to remove your pants, or?
Yeah.
This is Pod 5, the first fully immersive sleep system. Intelligent, adaptive.
Police interviewed a staggering 40 victims whose ages ranged from 13 to 16. Their accounts were shocking enough. But what they found in Epstein's home was a creepy insight into his depraved life. Dozens of nude photos, a steam room, and a massage room with sex toys. Among the damning evidence were phone message pads, clearly showing a trade in young girls, scheduling them for massage appointments, and flight logs listing girls being transported aboard Jeffrey's private plane, dubbed the Lolita Express.
I think it's really important to know that it is actually much, much worse than we think.
In 2006, much to the relief of police, this predator was finally caught, a wealth of evidence amassed against him. But his own vast wealth and his immense influence saw him escape charges that should have landed him in jail for life. Instead, he served a mere 13 months when prosecutors accepted his guilty plea to the minor charge of soliciting a child for prostitution. But while he was technically an inmate at the Palm Beach County Stockade, he really just slept there.
It was essentially a slap on the wrist. He got 12-hour work release from prison every single day. Other journalists have described it as he just basically had to sleep in a crappy motel for, a bit over a year.
For many, the most outrageous part of Epstein's plea bargain was a seedy deal he struck with the Attorney General for the Southern District of Florida. It gave Epstein and any alleged co-conspirators, known or unknown, immunity from further prosecution, supposedly forever. Worse still, none of his victims were told about the deal. How do you feel about that?
To be sexually abused by a man and have the government know, and then actually, co-conspire with the perpetrator to make sure nothing happens to him is just so, it just sounds unreal.
Why do you think the government did that?
My personal opinion about that is, money, power, and I think that there was a lot of people involved in this underage minor sex ring that they were running, and I think everybody wanted it to go away.
So you believe that there was a conspiracy at play here?
Oh, absolutely.
It really is a sordid story, everything that happened in Florida, and the fact that authorities did know, did arrest him, did charge him, and he still was able to continue.
And according to Virginia Giuffre, the abuse didn't stop with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not just their sexual plaything. She was now part of their international, some very famous names, and exposed some very sordid details. An incomprehensible position. How did you react?
I just remember afterwards how I felt walking down the stairs, and I just felt so dirty and so, just like a piece of me had been taken. Dirty, I felt, it was like my dirty little...
Look, you guys, Jeffrey Epstein's no worse than Diddy, y'all. He keep these explicit videos, of his victims doing these sexual acts. Now, he's no worse than Diddy, or he may be even worse than Diddy. Now, you have all these elites, and they're not releasing these documentation for some reason. The FBI got all the videos, all the photos. Sooner or later, they're gonna have to make it public. They're gonna have to make this public. Sooner or later, what comes in the darkness have to come to the light. Sooner or later, y'all. Sooner or later. Because they cannot continue to keep this a secret. Let's go.
Secret.
Virginia Giuffre's experience was eerily similar, except her recruiter was not a fellow teen, but the sophisticated and seemingly trustworthy Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia was 16 and working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when Maxwell spied her reading a textbook on massage.
She just seemed very nice, and she said, I've got a person that I know who's actually looking for a traveling masseuse. And if you want, I can get you an interview with him. If he likes you, we can get you educated. You'll be a real masseuse. And you'll get to travel and see the world. And like she made it sound like it was a dream come true. And it wasn't.
Within hours, Virginia was at Epstein's Florida mansion, lured there by Maxwell's promise. It ended in a devastating sexual attack.
So put it this way, we did the back of him, we did the back of Epstein, and then when he turned over, that's when I was instructed to get undressed and have sex with Jeffrey Epstein while Ghislaine Maxwell was participating as well.
You want to take a moment?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
So you were abused by both of them in your very first encounter?
Yeah, both of them. I was abused by Ghislaine and Epstein. I don't mean to sound sexist in any way, shape, or form, but I expected it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And, yeah, I think that's what hurts the most.
With Fiverr, you can hire top-rated freelance experts in a variety of AI services. Alternatively,
Maxwell's role as Epstein's co-conspirator, for which she is now serving a 20-year jail term, is well known. But in truth, it went well beyond Maxwell. The pair devised a scheme to feed Epstein's voracious appetite. They lured poverty-stricken girls in with cash, fanning their dreams of a better life. According to journalist Lucia Osborne Crowley, by the time the sexual abuse began, many were too invested in their promises to get out.
This was a well-oiled machine of finding vulnerable young girls who really needed someone to look after them, and then also using those girls to try and entrap younger and younger girls. And a lot of that, it seems, was developed in Florida.
How many girls do you think you brought to Jeffrey Epstein?
At the minimum 50, but anywhere from 50 to 70 girls.
What were their ages?
The same ages of me, 14, 15, 16. I just hold a lot of guilt and shame for doing those things, and just to know that I had any influence on that happening to somebody else, just, it's just devastating and breaks my heart.
Epstein's vile pyramid scheme might have continued unchecked, if not for the stepmother of one of his teenage victims, who called the Palm Beach Police Department in 2005.
It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters. Found out that ended up being that they went to Palm Beach to a gentleman's house, and they start off by giving this gentleman a massage, and he pays them if he likes them and he thinks that they're pretty enough, he keeps them around to do other things. Okay. So I wasn't quite sure if there was an investigation or if you guys had any word. Well, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
That initial call was so alarming, the police launched an investigation, and it didn't take them long to uncover the revolting scale of Epstein's network.
Did Jeff know anybody's real told you age, or you didn't care?
I don't think he cared. He told me the younger the better.
Yeah, so you take my shirt off. So I took my shirt off.
Okay, so were you in bra or were you topless?
I ended up being topless, yeah. And he started getting a little excited about it, and he started touching himself.
During the massage, did he ask you to remove your pants, or?
Yeah.
Police interviewed a staggering 40 victims whose ages ranged from 13 to 16. Their accounts were shocking enough. But what they found in Epstein's home was a creepy insight into his depraved life. Dozens of nude photos, a steam room, and a massage room with sex toys. Among the damning evidence were phone message pads, clearly showing a trade in young girls, scheduling them for massage appointments, and flight logs listing girls being transported aboard Jeffrey's private plane, dubbed the Lolita Express.
I think it's really important to know that it is actually much, much worse than we think.
In 2006, much to the relief of police, this predator was finally caught, a wealth of evidence amassed against him. But his own vast wealth and his immense influence saw him escape charges that should have landed him in jail for life. Instead, he served a mere 13 months when prosecutors accepted his guilty plea to the minor charge of soliciting a child for prostitution. But while he was technically an inmate at the Palm Beach County Stockade, he really...
See, trafficking, man, they should have got him a life sentence, man. For some reason, he was able to get off of that. And you'd think that he would already had learned. But, man, I tell y'all, man, sooner or later, all this is going to come to the light. His co-conspirators, everybody that was involved, everybody that knew him, sooner or later, man, this thing is going to come to the light. Let's go.
just slept there.
It was essentially a slap on the wrist. He got 12-hour work release from prison every single day. Other journalists have described it as he just basically had to sleep in a crappy motel for, a bit over a year.
For many, the most outrageous part of Epstein's plea bargain was a seedy deal he struck with the Attorney General for the Southern District of Florida. It gave Epstein and any alleged co-conspirators, known or unknown, immunity from further prosecution, supposedly forever. Worse still, none of his victims were told about the deal. How do you feel about that?
To be sexually abused by a man and have the government know, and then actually, co-conspire with the perpetrator to make sure nothing happens to him is just so. It just sounds unreal.
Why do you think the government did that?
My personal opinion about that is, money, power, and I think that there was a lot of people involved in this underage minor sex.
You see what she's saying? She's saying that she's saying that all the elite people, the rich people was involved in this, Jeffrey, Epstein enterprise. She thinking that all of these elite people that knew Jeffrey was involved. All other co-conspirators was involved of this Jeffrey Epstein enterprise, man. Now, you can't make this up, man. The government is hiding a secret, man, and they don't want to make it public. But sooner or later, you guys, this thing's gonna bust open.
Ring that they were running, and I think everybody wanted it to go away.
So you believe that there was a conspiracy at play here?
Oh, absolutely.
It really is a sordid story, everything that happened in Florida, and the fact that authorities did know, did arrest him, did charge him, and he still was able to continue.
And according to Virginia Giuffre, the abuse didn't stop with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not just their sexual plaything. She was now part of their international sex trafficking ring, lent out to whomever they liked.
I was trafficked to other billionaires. I was trafficked to politicians, professors, even royalty. It was the elite of the world. It was the people who run the world. It was the most powerful people in the world.
See? You see what I'm saying, y'all? The elite. She was influenced by the elite. The powerful influencers. You can't make this stuff up, y'all.
The world. So when a client comes to us with an ask to launch an influencer marketing campaign, the process is pretty streamlined. So what
Ghislaine was this sort of very exotic, glamorous figure who would drop in and, to be honest, name drop a lot of famous names that she'd been hanging out with. We heard about Bill Clinton and sort of all sorts of other people. And we also knew that she was very good friends with Prince Andrew, and that Jeffrey Epstein would sometimes have Prince Andrew to stay.
As a British expat in New York, journalist Vicky Ward moved in similar circles to socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of disgraced mega-rich media tycoon Robert Maxwell. Following her father's suspicious death aboard his boat in 1991, Ghislaine moved to New York, where she started her relationship with the millionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In 2002, Vicky was assigned to write a profile of the mysterious financier for Vanity Fair magazine.
When I began reporting this piece, I actually ran into Ghislaine Maxwell, and I sort of said breezily, "Oh, Ghislaine, yes, I'm writing this story about Jeffrey and the money." And I was really taken aback when she started to cry. Like, why is this woman crying? This doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, I didn't know that I was, from her perspective, probably in danger of pulling back the curtain on what was an absolutely horrific criminal sexual enterprise involving both of them.
Epstein and Maxwell complemented each other perfectly. He had the money she was used to, she had the contacts he wanted. The most high profile, of course, being Prince Andrew, who is famously accused of abusing the then 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre at Epstein and Maxwell's invitation.
We went to Club Tramp, and he danced with me, and he sweats a lot. He smells funny. And then we get in the car, and Ghislaine tells me in the car that I have to do what I do for Jeffrey for Prince Andrew. And that's when I learned what was going to happen.
There's a slight problem with the sweating, because
It was a claim and counterclaim that turned this royal's life upside down. His ill-advised decision to appear on the BBC in 2019 left him, if not sweating, then red-faced. His attempt to convince us he knew nothing of the teenage Virginia fell flat when this photo, taken in 2001 in Maxwell's London apartment, resurfaced.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
yes,
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Your friend suggested that the photo is fake.
I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it
is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it. But I don't remember that photograph ever being taken.
So as you know, Prince Andrew denies the allegations against him, and he says that this photo is a fake, that he was never there, and that is not his arm, and they're not his fingers.
Those are his fingers. That is Andrew. This photo has been verified as an original, and it's been since given to the FBI, and they've never contested that it's a fake. And I know it's real. And he needs to stop with all of these lame excuses. We're sick of hearing it. This is a real photo.
And that was the first time you met him.
And that's the very first time I met him. And that's right before I was abused by him.
How many times were you trafficked to him?
3 times.
Her allegations against Prince Andrew are laid bare in the newly unsealed court documents. The disgraced royal is mentioned 69 times, and not just by Virginia. Johanna Schoberg, who was 21 at the time, claims to have had her own traumatic experience with Prince Andrew. And she says she saw the Prince and Virginia together at the Epstein mansion in New York. According to British-based Australian author Lucia Osborne Crowley, her account, given under oath, is damning of the Prince.
We also have an allegation from a separate victim, Johanna, who has said that she was groped by Prince Andrew. So that's incredibly significant because we have sworn testimony from a second person corroborating that he did engage in illegal acts relating to minors.
Do you expect Prince Andrew to be under further legal scrutiny?
I think that certainly Prince Andrew will be facing many more questions given what we've learned in these new documents, and it's really important, I think, for the authorities to look at the fact that there is a second person who's alleging that he broke the law, and whether they need to speak to those victims and other potential victims to see if there is anything that they can or should be charging him with.
I wonder if you have any sense now of guilt, regret, or shame about any of your behaviour and your friendship with Epstein.
As far as my association with him was concerned, it had some seriously beneficial outcomes in areas that have nothing to do with what I would describe as what we're talking about today.
Prince Andrew has since found regret, but continues to deny all the allegations levelled at him. He settled with Virginia Giuffre on the eve of their civil trial in 2022, reportedly for more than $15 million. In settling with her, the Prince likely thought the saga was over, but the release of these latest documents once again raises questions for him and many other Epstein associates.
Those are very, very wealthy, powerful people, and so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
Billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested, charged with sex trafficking involving underage girls.
He could face up to 45 years behind bars.
It was a prized catch. In 2019, the roar around Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring was so loud, police were forced to act. Neatly befitting the lifestyle of a jet-setting millionaire, Epstein was nabbed on his private plane as he landed back in the US from Paris. For his most outspoken victim, Virginia Giuffre, his arrest was a gift more than 20 years in the making.
I never thought it was going to happen. I honestly thought he was just going to continue to get away with it over and over and over again, just like he proved so many times. So yeah, it was like Christmas in July. Big time.
But the expectation that Epstein would finally face his crimes was dashed when he was found dead by suicide in his jail cell a month later.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life. The bombshell development raising many new questions.
With Epstein dead, the charges against him were dismissed, denying justice to his many victims. And his co-conspirator, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, became the most wanted woman in the world, as she went on the run.
So the idea that this woman could be involved in something as depraved and horrific as this, that was mind-boggling.
As journalist Vicky Ward and the rest of the world watched on in fascination, Ghislaine was tracked down to a luxurious New Hampshire hideaway after eluding police for a year.
Today we announce the arrest of one of the villains in this investigation.
This day to me has been like one of the best days of my life. I have not stopped smiling and crying happy tears. And I'm just, I'm elated to know that she's where she belongs.
Immediately upon Maxwell's arrest, Virginia spoke for all the victims of the sex trafficking ring.
She ruined so many lives. She belongs in jail. You want to hurt kids? That's where you go.
In 2022, Maxwell was convicted on 5 sex trafficking counts. The then 60-year-old sentenced to 20 years in jail. She has lodged an appeal which will be reviewed in March and continues to claim her innocence from jail, as she told her brother, Kevin Maxwell.
Everyone was always asking who is the real G, who's the real Ghislaine.
It's definitely not the person portrayed. I feel completely divorced from the person that people reference and talk about.
Is it the biggest misconception of you?
That I'm the cruelest, meanest, horriblest person who's committed crimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I literally haven't seen any details that are accurate.
Lucia Osborne Crowley was one of the few journalists granted access to the court to report on Maxwell's trial.
It was surprising that even at her own federal sex trafficking trial, she didn't appear to have a lot of humility and still was incredibly confident. And I certainly got the sense that she did not expect to be convicted.
And certainly no remorse.
Certainly no remorse. She basically said that she was sorry for the damage that Jeffrey Epstein had caused them, and that's all she said.
With Maxwell behind bars and Epstein dead, this case appeared to be resolved. But the recent release of these court documents shows how little we still know.
There are so many names that we are left with question marks about. What was his appeal? Why did some of the most powerful men in the world flock to him? What was Bill Gates doing around Jeffrey Epstein? I'd love to hear from Bill Clinton what he saw in Jeffrey Epstein. That would be great to know.
In all, more than 150 names have been linked to the disgraced millionaire. But apart from some denials of any wrongdoing, the silence from those identified has been deafening.
We've got evidence of sworn testimony where people are naming very, very powerful people who would have been in a position potentially to do something about what was going on here. And instead we had a sex trafficking ring that went on for at least 2 decades, possibly 3, with almost complete impunity. And so that's the point that I think we really all need to hold on to about the scale here, is that not the splashiness of these names, but just how many there are, just how many people there are that victims pointed to say, this person can corroborate my story, this person can be a witness, this person met me on the island, this person saw me. And those are very, very wealthy, powerful people, and so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
We'd have to assume that they're just running from this as far and as fast as they can.
Yes, well, I've been quite surprised at the silence over the last couple of weeks, if I'm completely honest. I would have thought that at least some of these people would have felt an obligation to do some explaining.
At the very least, association with Jeffrey Epstein raises questions of judgment, right? Nobody looks good for having hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, now knowing everything that we know. Whether or not they should be held accountable as to whether or not there was any criminal activity. And obviously, we just don't know. One has to hope that because we now know so much more, that there is so much public scrutiny on this, that the wheels of justice will turn in a way that they definitely didn't for a very long time.
The legacy of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is to expose a darkness too awful to imagine. But as difficult as it is to comprehend, it would seem there's even more to be revealed.
Certainly, from what I know, that there are more people who aren't even on this list that either knew or potentially participated in what was going on around Jeffrey Epstein.
Do you expect that others will be charged, that others will face prosecution?
I very much hope so. I think it's really important to know it is actually much, much worse than we think and that we're comfortable accepting.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our... There was little Jeffrey Epstein wouldn't do to satisfy his lust for young women and girls. He spent millions masterminding a worldwide sex trafficking operation. A year ago, he was arrested and a month after that, died in custody. Investigators, though, refused to let this scandal go to the grave with him. They shifted their attention to his high-profile friends, among them Prince Andrew, who continues to dodge requests from the FBI for an interview. But now there's been a substantial breakthrough with the arrest of socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, accused of being Epstein's right-hand woman. She's been charged with multiple child sex offences, and for the first time in a long time, the countless victims in this wicked saga are feeling relief instead of terror. Little St James in the Virgin Islands is a picture-perfect playground for the super rich. But it's never been seen like this before. This now abandoned island is the keeper of terrible secrets. A place haunted by what went on here, at the hands of the now dead Jeffrey Epstein, a man who knew no limits.
On my own island, I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do. I can explore as I see fit.
In 2003, as he told a reporter, this island was his world, run by his rules.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. What I'm really free to do is I'm free to follow my own personality.
And what a dark personality it was. Driven to sexually abuse countless young girls. His private sanctuary, an isolated prison known as Pedo Island, where he would share the girls like prey with his rich and powerful friends.
We weren't anything important to them at all. We weren't even a human being to them. We were just another toy to be passed around. And that's what they did.
Jeffrey Epstein may be dead, but the fight for justice is not.
Today we announced the arrest of one of the villains in this investigation.
Just 4 days ago, Ghislaine Maxwell, the most wanted woman in the world, was found hiding out in New Hampshire.
She ruined so many lives. She belongs in jail. You want to hurt kids? That's where you go.
Epstein's #1 co-conspirator finally arrested after a year on the run.
Helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old.
She's repellent. She's truly evil.
Now, a new criminal investigation on Epstein's Caribbean island exposes the true extent.
Now, I can only think that there's more, cold conspirators, man. Now they got her, Mr. Jeffrey Epstein, right hand man. Now there are some more cold conspirators, man. Just a matter of time that FBI, do the full investigation, man. If they do the full investigation, man. The thing I'm gonna say is they got They got the video. They got these photos. They got who was all in these photos. The elite. You have war leaders. At these parties. So, nothing to surprise you guys why the government want to keep it a secret, because the truth, is what comes out of darkness will come into that light. So, like I said, I think that's why, Elon Musk, when he seen these documents of Trump, you know, at these parties, I think that's why, Elon Musk was trying to warn a lot of us, you know, and I think the time is coming for Trump to get impeached. You know what I mean? I think the time is coming where, you know, they will do a thorough investigation. And, it's just a matter of time, man. Let's go.
Of this predator's shocking behaviour. What happened on Little St. James, it was so horrifying. The actions are just reprehensible. And adds pressure on Prince Andrew, still hiding in the palace, refusing to be interviewed by the FBI.
Prince Andrew has simply totally stonewalled.
Of all Epstein's victims, it's the allegations of Virginia Roberts Giuffre that has had the most fallout around the world. Amongst many others, she claims Epstein trafficked her to Prince Andrew 3 times. The first in London when she was 17, then once in New York, and the third and final time here in the Virgin Islands. Prince Andrew, close friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, denies the allegations. The third time that you were trafficked to him, were you alone with him?
No, there were a lot of younger girls with us, and it was very shocking.
How many young women with you?
I believe there were 8.
Prince Andrew met Epstein through Maxwell, a British socialite, daughter of disgraced media baron Robert Maxwell. With Ghislaine Maxwell's arrest, how do you think Prince Andrew is feeling right now?
Oh, Prince Andrew should be panicking at the moment, because Ghislaine doesn't really care about anyone else but Ghislaine.
It's all laid bare in her artwork. Maria is filling her canvas with the Epstein story, the bad and the ugly. For her, a story that started in 1995. It was then, as a gifted student at the New York Academy of Art, she met patrons Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
It makes me really sad because the only thing I did wrong was I went to the wrong graduate school. It's the only thing I did wrong.
Jeffrey fell in love with Maria's art, bought her first major work, and hired her in 1995 to buy art for his New York mansion. During that year, she had a front row seat to what went on behind these closed doors, and saw Ghislaine Maxwell in full flight.
She would turn like that, and as school's getting out, she's like, I've got to get the nubiles. I'm going to get the nubiles.
What did she mean by that, and what did you witness?
So, several times, I was in the car with her, and she would ask the driver to stop the car. And she'd dash across to the school or the park or wherever she was going, and she would write down her phone number for a child, a young girl. And then I'd see that child at the house, and she'd say they're auditioning. I found a model in the park. And I thought it was really strange because I did see a couple girls in braces, and I've never seen a model with braces.
Of course, it was a ruse. Epstein claimed to help manage Victoria's Secret, and Maxwell was his eager model scout.
Yeah, so you take my shirt off, so I took my shirt off.
Instead, as Maria unwittingly witnessed, Maxwell was happily procuring girls to feed Epstein's insatiable appetite for sex with teenagers and young women.
He started getting a little excited about it, and he started touching himself.
a compulsion Maria would soon experience firsthand.
Ghislaine came in to get me one evening. Basically, they brought me to the. Ghislaine escorts me to Jeffrey's room, and he's lying there, and he goes, "Well, here, sit down," And so right next to him, and then Ghislaine sits on the other side, and they began assaulting me. But really, while I was lying there the whole time, I'm thinking, my sister's been around these people. My sister was 16. She's been around them alone.
Maria's fears were well-founded. Her younger sister Annie revealed she too was sexually abused by the pair. Maria went to the FBI. It was 1996, and she was the very first victim to officially report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the authorities. But in a pattern that would be set in the decades ahead, her complaint was ignored.
They just kept it all quiet, put it in the bottom drawer. And they were so dismissive that I just felt daunted and I stopped.
But by going to police, Maria felt the full force of Maxwell's fury. Terrified, Maria went into hiding and gave up her art career. What sort of threats has she made against you?
Originally, it started with things like, I'm going to burn your art, and then I'm going to burn your career, and then I'm going to burn you and the house you live in. And then it was, oh, be careful crossing a street. You can get shot in the back of the head. They were threats against my life. And I told the FBI this.
Do you reflect on how different life would be for so many?
You see, that's bullshit. She told the FBI that she was being threatened, harassed, and the FBI ain't doing nothing. They got the photos, they got the videos, they got the co-conspirators, they got the people, that was at these parties. And the FBI ain't doing nothing, man. They got all this stuff, and they fail to release these videos to the public, man. What makes it think that, yeah, we are in a corrupted justice system, man, where there's no justice, man. I won't be surprised how many co-conspirators is in this case, man. I won't be surprised if Trump was involved. And many other world leaders and many other politicians. This is such a disgrace to our nation, man. You got the Epstein files, the documentary they have. But the FBI don't want to release the videos to the public. They don't even want to tell you who is all involved. Sad. But sooner or later, everything gonna come into a light. Let's roll this clip.
Women today, if the FBI had investigated your complaints in 1996.
Yeah. I think about it all the time. I do. And it hurts a lot. And I never had children because of it. Because I didn't feel like they would be safe.
Coming up, threats.
He made no bones about it that he could inflict harm.
Lies.
She wanted me to believe that she was Jeffrey's girlfriend.
And bargains with prosecutors.
It's a deal like none other than I've ever heard of.
How Epstein and Maxwell,
She's repellent. Way worse than I even understood.
did whatever they pleased.
To get away with it makes me very angry.
That's next on 60 Minutes. In July last year, the slippery Jeffrey Epstein was finally arrested and charged with sex trafficking a minor.
Epstein was arrested aboard his private jet.
For years, he'd used his wealth and power to avoid the full brunt of the law.
The charges allege that Epstein sexually abused young girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts for money.
But finally apprehended in New York with bail refused and with no other way out, lawyer Brad Edwards believes Epstein killed himself in prison. Despite some speculation, he was murdered.
I think once his bond was revoked, his world just crashed in, and the only control he had left was over his life. So he took it.
Hearing directly from a victim is the only way that anyone's really going to understand.
Brad represents victims and describes Epstein as a genius sociopath, one of his most confounding and dangerous adversaries.
He was charming, charismatic, funny. He made you want to like him. That's why he was able to access over 100 young girls and do the kind of things that he was able to do.
Yeah, you speak about his charisma and charm, but he sort of had a double whammy, didn't he? Because he was always implying threats that he could and would hurt you.
He would make no bones about it, that he could inflict harm. You know, he might say, "I'll tell you what. If you keep prosecuting me this way, if you keep doing this, someone is going to get hurt." And so clearly it was a threat. You know, there's no other way to perceive it. But his delivery was as non-threatening as possible.
I think they were in disguise. They were wolves in sheep's clothing.
In the early 90s, the well-connected Christina Oxenberg, a member of the Serbian royal family and a cousin to the British royals, met Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, his alleged madam, now charged with procuring girls for him and sometimes joining in the abuse.
She wanted me to believe that she was Jeffrey's girlfriend, but I knew that she wasn't. But she wanted that to be the storyline.
How did you know she wasn't his girlfriend?
Because she's not 12.
With Epstein's death, Maxwell went on the run. But Christina remembers the time when both Maxwell and Epstein were desperate to be seen.
They were a perfect fit. They needed each other. They were both halves of a whole that they wanted to be. He had the money, she had the connections.
Did you like Jeffrey Epstein?
No, not at all. He was just a goomba from Queens. Call me a snob. But no, he was a typical greedy person who wants more than they already have.
66-year-old billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein was in court today for allegedly engaging in sex trafficking crimes.
How serious are these charges against Epstein, David?
When Epstein's arrest last year made headlines, Christina was moved to call the FBI. So disturbed was she by what Ghislaine Maxwell had told her in private all those years ago.
She was very cocky, and she told me that she had just got her helicopter pilot's license, and that as a gift, to reward her, Jeffrey had bought her a helicopter. And I said, so dangerous. Why would you want to do that? And she said, well, because this way we have total control on privacy of who's with us.
And Maxwell let her in on another secret, this time about the infamous Lolita Express, their private plane used to transport young girls and high-profile friends, including Bill Clinton.
She also told me in that meeting that the private plane that she and Jeffrey used, was wired for audio, video.
Christina, at the time, were there any red flags for you? At that point, were you thinking, children are at risk here?
Unfortunately, I did not have even the wherewithal to think of such tremendous evil, frankly. I just thought she was the sort of rancid personality. I had no idea we were dealing with true evil.
Justice has long been denied in this sordid case.
Why did you keep going back if you didn't want to go back?
In 2005, an investigation started into Epstein for the sexual abuse of more than 40 young girls in Florida.
I didn't know what to do. I was afraid that he was going to harm my family.
Prosecutors had the evidence and the opportunity to put this sexual predator away for life. Instead, Epstein negotiated a secret, seedy deal. He'd plead guilty to the lesser charge of unlawfully paying for sex with a teenager, for which he'd served just over a year in jail. In return, he was let off all other charges, and incredibly, his co-conspirators...
Now, is it just me? You know what I mean? But like I said, man, how are they gonna let this man walk free when he was involved with 40 young children? See, when we look at this white justice system, man, and for Jeffrey Epstein to get off, plead guilty for a lesser charge, come on, man. Are you serious, y'all? Are you serious right now? That's why America's judgment is here. Because we live in a wicked justice system. This is why their judgment is here, man. This is why, man. And now the government is hiding the tapes because they got the tapes. They got who's on the tapes. So, let them continue to play these games, man. Like God ain't seeing. Like God ain't watching. Let them keep on playing this game, man. Because everything's going to sooner or later come into that light, man. And justice is going to be served. Justice is going to be served. It's just a matter of time.
including Ghislaine Maxwell, were given full immunity in Florida, but only for the crimes committed there between 2001 and 2007.
It's a deal like none other than I've ever heard of. But the fact that not only was he able to get away with dozens, if not hundreds, of crimes, but also somehow get immunity for his co-conspirators, named and unnamed, is something that even the judges who have reviewed this case have never seen.
With her immunity deal in Florida and a sense the criminal investigation had run cold, Maxwell settled into a luxury hideout, aptly named Tucked Away in New Hampshire. It seems Maxwell didn't count on being chased down for her crimes outside the immunity period. At a remote court hearing on Thursday, where reporters could only listen in thanks to COVID, Maxwell's disbelief could be heard.
A very loud British woman screaming, "Why is this happening? How is this happening? How could this happen?" And just crying her eyes out.
Acting U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss.
As alleged, starting in 1994 until at least 1997, Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old.
Maxwell has been charged with multiple child sex abuse offences relating to the Epstein sex ring, as well as perjury for lying about it under oath. As the world played the Where's Ghislaine guessing game, FBI investigators knew all along, waiting for the right time to strike.
We've been discreetly keeping tabs on Maxwell's whereabouts as we work this investigation, and more recently we learned she had slithered away to a gorgeous property in New Hampshire, continuing to live a life of privilege while her victims live with the trauma inflicted upon them years ago.
Haunted by that trauma, Virginia Roberts Giuffre was not only abused by Epstein and Maxwell, but also trafficked by them. She alleges to some of the most powerful people in the world. Virginia is now married and lives in Queensland, from where she runs the Victims Refuse Silence Foundation. News of Maxwell's arrest makes this a good day.
This day to me has been like one of the best days of my life. I have not stopped smiling and crying happy tears. And I'm just, I'm elated to know that she's where she belongs. She is the most narcissistic, evil, vain woman I've ever known. And she's finally been knocked off her pedestal.
Coming up,
Their actions are just reprehensible.
no escape
These young girls subject to sexual assault, sexual exploitation.
from an island hell.
Help us victims get some accountability.
The women refusing to give up.
I'm very proud of myself for standing up.
And what now for the Playboy Royal?
The Department of Justice feels Prince Andrew is simply totally stonewalled.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Jeffrey Epstein's paradise getaway in the Virgin Islands may now lie abandoned and desolate, but it holds the secrets of a sex ring even more extensive than first thought.
Once you get on that island, how do you get off?
The Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, Denise George, paints a terrifying picture of what confronted the young women who found themselves trapped here.
It's not like a person who's there and needs help that they can sneak away and run outside and flag down a police car.
There is now evidence that Epstein's year in a Florida jail back in 2007 did not stop him from sexually abusing young girls. It's alleged he did so until a year before his death here on the Virgin Islands.
These young girls and women were subject to sexual assault, sexual exploitation, through coercion, false imprisonment, where the passports at some points were taken away, and it was quite a number of women, at least up to 2018, that continued.
And that is the jaw-dropping aspect of this, isn't it? So what your investigation is showing is the broad scope of Jeffrey Epstein's nefarious activities, that it just kept going.
Based on the evidence that we found thus far.
And then there's the FBI investigation out of New York, which snared Ghislaine Maxwell. It still has its sights on Prince Andrew. Virginia Roberts Giuffre has long maintained she was trafficked to the prince by Epstein.
She says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you. And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Prince Andrew is likely sweating right now. With her arrest, there's speculation Maxwell will reveal all the dark and dirty secrets, naming all the men who were party to them.
In the event that she were to become a cooperator, I think that we can deal with that.
I really hope she comes forward and says A, B, C, D, E was involved. This is how it ran. You know, just help us victims get some accountability.
Last month, the Duke of York's legal team released a statement claiming he was cooperating with the FBI investigation.
The Duke of York has on at least 3 occasions this year offered his assistance as a witness to the Department of Justice.
In turn,
today, Prince Andrew yet again sought to falsely portray himself to the public as eager and willing to cooperate.
The US Department of Justice released its own statement denying Prince Andrew was telling the truth. According to Virginia's lawyer, David Boys, this is an extraordinary step.
It's very significant in terms of the extent to which the Department of Justice feels Prince Andrew is simply totally stonewalled.
What is the end game here in terms of getting Prince Andrew before the Department of Justice?
They want to interview him as a witness, as somebody who was present at the sex trafficking, somebody who was close to Jeffrey Epstein. The second thing that they obviously are going to look at is Prince Andrew as a participant.
Epstein's luxury properties on the island, in Paris, New York, New Mexico, and Florida are where so many girls were abused, where many of them say they were recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell and the other co-conspirators.
Everybody needs to be held accountable that was involved with Jeffrey Epstein and all the crimes they committed.
Courtney Wild was just 14 when she became trapped in Epstein's abusive web. For the past 12 years, she's been fighting in the courts to make him and all co-conspirators answerable for their crimes.
I feel like I'm fighting against the biggest, baddest people in the world.
But in the long years since Epstein's arrest and death, his victims have just been offered some compassion, now able to seek compensation without the pain of lengthy court cases. Do you have any idea yet of how many women will claim and what sort of figures we're talking about as individual payouts?
My expectation is that it's probably somewhere in the range of 50 to 100. I think you're certainly talking about $1 million or more. The recoveries are going to be quite substantial.
In a move that has shocked and appalled many, Ghislaine Maxwell has also staked a claim on the Epstein estate, demanding it pick up her legal bills.
I'm like, what? She's doing what? I just can't even believe she has the balls to do something like that. She basically conspired with him, and the fact that she would come back for money after he's passed, it's just offensive.
Things would have been very different for Courtney if she had not been hurt like this. Would have been very different for Virginia if she had not been hurt like this. These are very sweet people that have a lot of creativity and they're very smart.
As women, Maria Farmer, Courtney Wilde, and Virginia Roberts Giuffre are fighting against the unthinkable crimes done to them as teenagers. With Epstein dead and Maxwell potentially facing more than 30 years in jail, that fight now turns against the other co-conspirators who enabled Epstein to inflict his monstrous acts on the most vulnerable.
At the end of the day, I'm very proud of myself for standing up to somebody like him and putting up a fight, regardless of who he was.
Is this the end of the Epstein story?
This is just the beginning. There were so many women in Epstein's orbit that participated, procured, and benefited from Epstein's sickness. Jeffrey was dirty. He was sick. He was a pedophile. He's gone. Ghislaine, she is the wicked one. And these women with her, they deserve the same punishment. They deserve to be taken down as well.
So just the beginning.
Just the beginning. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. When Ghislaine Maxwell, the one-time madam of billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, was last year convicted of sex crimes against underage girls, her victims hoped a jail cell would silence her. Turns out they were wrong. As well as appealing her 20-year sentence, Maxwell has now begun a concerted campaign to rewrite history. And in an audacious and strangely compelling interview from prison, she's making some extraordinary claims. Not only is the disgraced Prince Andrew the victim of a malicious hoax, she says anyone who thinks she's cruel, horrible, and guilty misunderstands her completely. It's behind the high walls and the barbed wire of Florida's Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution, where sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell will spend the next 20 years. Famous for her high society connections, her toxic devotion to pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and for going on the run for a year, 61-year-old Maxwell now wears a new mantle. Inmate 02879 509.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. So, what is that behind you?
It is a painting.
The painting. Okay.
Ghislaine Maxwell is nothing if not audacious. Prison walls cannot stop her calling out what she considers a great untruths. Speaking for the first time since her conviction, Maxwell has chosen to talk to her brother Kevin in an interview brokered by producer Daphne Barak.
Everyone was always asking who is the real G, who's the real Gila.
It's definitely not the person portrayed. I feel completely divorced from the person that people reference and talk about.
Is that the biggest misconception of you?
That I'm the cruelest, meanest, horriblest person who's committed crimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I literally haven't seen any details that are accurate.
For many, it's a galling PR campaign by Maxwell and her brothers Kevin and Ian to set the record as they want the world to see it.
My sister is no monster. We believe in her innocence and that she'll be exonerated in the end.
Ask you about all the allegations that have come out.
The effort to rehabilitate their disgraced sister's reputation comes as the appeal against her conviction and sentence looms.
Do you feel safe in jail? Do you feel safe because there was threats on your life? So do you feel safe?
Yes, I feel safe. I don't have any safety issues.
Because as you told me, jails are sometimes dangerous, and Jeffrey Epstein died in jail. Do you believe that he committed suicide? Because many don't.
No, he didn't. I don't believe he did. I believe that he was murdered.
She has no shame, she has no heart, she has no conscience.
For Virginia Giuffre and survivors like her, there is no disputing the facts. As the court found, Ghislaine Maxwell procured underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein. She groomed them, sexually abused and trafficked them. In many ways, some say, she was even worse than the despicable Epstein.
I don't mean to sound sexist in any way, shape, or form, but I expected it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And, yeah, I think that's what hurts the most.
Why did Amazon send me $20,000? Because I use Amazon AI. I'm going to show you a way to potentially make money by pairing Amazon with the power of AI without ever selling physical products. And I promise you've never heard about this before.
Why is Amazon paying me $63,000 a month? Well, I didn't make this kind of money selling yoga mats and toasters, and I damn sure wasn't talking to my friends into buying vitamins and juices. I did it with a free app that's probably already on your phone, and that app is the Kindle app.
I just created some simple digital products, then I put them up on Amazon, and it was so exciting. The first time I tried it, I made $14, and I was like, oh my goodness, this actually works. Hi, I'm Carla Marie, and the coolest part is Amazon puts over 300 million customers just a click away. So age, experience, qualifications, none of it matters. I want to share my full system with you, but obviously this is an ad, so I'm hosting a free workshop where I walk you through my system step by step. This system has transformed my life and has sprinkled a little magic in the lives of hundreds of other people. Now, I hate workshops that are so slow and boring that they send you to sleep, so I made sure that this workshop moves fast and that it's fun, exciting, and informative. That said, if you love...
What do you make of Ghislaine Maxwell's decision to speak from jail like this?
It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a surprise because it gives her still that feeling that she's in control, even behind bars. And I think she's doing it for attention.
Randy Kogan is a psychologist based in Florida's Palm Beach.
Okay, slow down. Slow down so I can understand. Tell me what happened.
For years now, she's been treating women who, as girls, were abused by Epstein and Maxwell. Is she a monster?
I think in many ways she is. What Ghislaine did, she hunted, she preyed
on these girls and procured them for sexual exploitation and sexual trafficking. That's a monster.
But from behind bars, Maxwell is determined to present a selfless side as she discusses her future with brother Kevin.
If you, when you win your appeal and get out of prison, do you think you'll be accepted again by the people who were once your friends?
Well, I can't know what my friends will do or won't do. I mean, my focus won't be on that. I will always turn to what I've now decided that will form the rest of my life, which is helping other people who are or have been incarcerated.
I just would like to thank you so much, and it's such an honor to be here.
Attaching herself to causes is not new for Ghislaine Maxwell.
I'm here representing civil society.
It was not that long ago, in an attempt to distance herself from Epstein, her great passion was to save the planet's oceans.
The deep sea and the wild animals that live there.
Now it's other inmates and, of course, herself, with yet another spin on her relationship with former boyfriend Epstein.
When you look back, and what do you think your biggest mistake was?
I honestly wish I'd never met him. Because I didn't know that he was so awful. I mean, obviously now, looking back with hindsight, of course.
Do you consider yourself a victim of Jeffrey?
Well, I don't love the use of the word victim. But clearly, I spent time with him and knew him has devastated my life and hurt many people that I love and hold dear that are around me.
Do you believe that?
I don't. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein was an opportunity to her, and I believe that she was an opportunity to Jeffrey Epstein. Without Jeffrey, I don't believe that Ghislaine could have maintained the lifestyle that her father gave her for most of her life.
Well, he paid her $30 million.
That's exactly right. And he got plenty in return.
If Ghislaine is a victim of anyone, according to Randy Cogan, it is most likely her domineering father, the disgraced media baron, Robert Maxwell. He fleeced hundreds of millions of dollars from his employees' pension funds before his body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean, having apparently fallen overboard from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. The official cause of his mysterious death in 1991 was heart attack and accidental drowning. But in echoes of her response to Epstein's suicide, Ghislaine believes in something more sinister, as she revealed in this interview in 1992.
What do you feel? What happened to him? You'll never know, so you'll never be 100% sure of exactly what took place. The only thing I'm sure of is that he did not commit suicide.
I feel that Robert and Jeffrey have very similar qualities. And I feel that Ghislaine spent most of her life trying to please her father. And her father groomed her to be this socialite, to learn how to read people and manipulate and exploit people.
People who spent time with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein when they were together say that Ghislaine was deeply in love with Jeffrey Epstein, that she would do anything for him. Can what happened to those girls be categorized as an act of love? That she was acting out of love for Jeffrey, and that's why she did these despicable things?
I don't know that Ghislaine is capable of love. And the love that she has for Jeffrey, I think it was the idea of who Jeffrey was and what Jeffrey had to offer. I think that's where her love was.
From behind prison walls, Ghislaine is not only determined to correct the world's view of her, but she is doing her best to resurrect her close friend, the cancelled and shameful Prince Andrew. This photo changed the course of history, but Ghislaine claims to know it's a hoax.
I have information that would indicate that it is a fraud and a fake.
Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell lived a glamorous life of travel and exclusive getaways with homes in Paris, New York, New Mexico, the Virgin Islands, and Palm Beach, Florida.
Wait, if you were detained at any San Bernardino juvenile detention facility, such as High Desert or Gilbert Street, this is the money glitch that's getting former detainees properly compensated.
But beyond the glitz, it was dark and evil, with much of the sexual abuse of underage girls happening behind these closed doors. Most of the properties have been sold off, with Epstein's former Palm Beach mansion now razed to the ground. Psychologist Randy Kogan says for her patients, the destruction of this place does not remove all their scars, but it certainly helps their healing.
It was very hard. I have 1 or 2 victims that would have to drive past there to get to work, and it was very hard because they would have to try different routes and just to prevent being triggered.
New York attorney Eric Fadali represented 8 victims of the Epstein and Maxwell sex trafficking ring. He says knowing Ghislaine Maxwell is locked up gives them a great sense of peace. But this interview with her brother Kevin and producer Daphne Barak, her ability to get her voice heard, as inane as it might be.
And the tofu has there's no seasoning allowed, so there's no salt or pepper or anything. So it's
bland as hell.
Beyond tasteless.
Jeopardizes their sense of achieving justice.
I think it's just trying to shift the narrative. I think she's trying to play the victim, which was exactly her trial strategy. The tofu doesn't taste good enough. You know, she's playing the role of victim, and it's really, I think just gross is the best word. It's really sad, and it's really unfair to the victims for her to keep doing this.
I mean, it's something that everybody asks. You've now been in jail for 240 years, and what gives you the strength to keep going?
The love of my family and friends and many, many sports that I have. And because I fight for myself for what I know is true. And that inspires me every day.
And on the more negative side, there are many women who feel betrayed by you and want you to stay in jail. What do you say to them?
I say that Epstein died and they should take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen. I hope that they have some closure by the judicial process that took place, and I wish them time to heal and to be able to have a productive and good life going forward. And that's what I hope for them.
Is she justified in any way in claiming that she's the fall guy for Jeffrey Epstein because he's no longer around to be prosecuted?
I don't see that. I don't see her as being a fall guy. She hunted these girls. She preyed on them. She groomed them. She participated in sexual acts. She is just as much guilty as Jeffrey Epstein.
Maxwell is not just trying to exonerate herself, she's also fighting for the redemption of Prince Andrew. It was the explosive allegations of Virginia Giuffre that she was trafficked to him by his good friends Epstein and Maxwell when she was just 17 that ultimately led to the prince being exorcised from the royal family. But as the saying goes, with friends like these, who needs enemies?
I thought it was satire when I first saw it. I cannot believe someone actually put that out there to try to disprove any of these claims.
It was preposterous and clumsy, but this photo was offered by the Maxwells to the prince in his legal battle with Virginia. Donning masks of Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew, this couple was photographed in Ghislaine Maxwell's bathtub. They were trying to disprove Virginia's allegation she and the prince had a bath together, claiming the space was too small for the foreplay she described. But the photo would seem to prove otherwise.
I'm not sure I've ever seen someone post a picture of two people in a bathtub to try to prove that two people couldn't fit in that bathtub. I mean, add to it that they taped pictures of Prince Andrew and Mr. Frey to their faces. It's one of the most absurd things I have ever seen. I've been doing this for a pretty long time.
Without making any admissions of guilt, last year the prince settled the civil lawsuit brought against him by Virginia for a rumoured £12 million. It has been reported Prince Andrew is now trying to withdraw from the settlement and re-establish his role in the royal family. What are the chances of him being able to claw back some of that settlement, which he's claiming he wants to do now?
Zero. He has zero chance of being able to claw back that settlement. He is a competent adult. He was certainly well informed about the results and the consequences of signing that settlement agreement.
Back in her Florida jail, Ghislaine Maxwell continues her campaign to discredit Virginia Giuffre. And her so-called smoking gun is this now infamous photograph of Prince Andrew and Virginia, who was just 17 at the time. The photo was taken by Jeffrey Epstein in 2001 in Ghislaine Maxwell's London townhouse. But the mission to cast doubt on its authenticity began with Prince Andrew in 2019 in this disastrous interview.
But it's possible that it was you with your arm around.
That's me, but whether that's my hand or whether that's the position I have simply no recollection of a photograph ever being taken.
And now, rather desperately, Ghislaine claims that she knows it was a setup.
Another issue was just the photo that was shot in Kennington Street, which we've always thought was a fake. And that's just because it didn't happen and because we just think it was a fake.
That's right. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's real for a second. In fact, I'm sure it's not.
It remains the fact that no original has ever been produced.
Well, there's never been an original. And further, there's no photograph, and I've only ever seen a photocopy of it. And further, I have information that would indicate that it is a fraud and a fake.
Maxwell was not pushed on what her so-called information was, but Virginia addressed these claims back in 2019.
This photo has been verified as an original, and it's been since given to the FBI, and they've never contested that it's a fake. This is a real photo.
It also has to be remembered that this photograph was published in 2011. Nobody from Buckingham Palace jumped up and down and said this is a fake. Nobody said it was a fake. Only when it came down to the crunch.
No, that's a great...
Okay, for more updates, please subscribe to the channel. Pretty much going to wrap it from here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We out.